right, what's up? I see Connie, what's going on? Gary, Shane, NYC, and TD. I thought I'd pop on for a minute as I walk back to Grand Central Terminal. Coffee Guy NYC, welcome. Scott is interested in your opinion on rare earth minerals. I think they're going to be really important. We'll talk about some stuff tonight, but look at how peaceful and quiet it is on Central Park South. This is my old neighborhood, 59th Street. We're actually standing outside my old building, 106 Central Park South. Now, the interesting thing is that I don't recognize the vast majority of the usernames because I think YouTube changed something. Keith, this is Galaxy Novo's company. Indeed. Western Mass Dave. What's going on? You know, speaking of Galaxy, I think we might be, well, it's probably solidly confirmed that we are in a bear market for crypto. And if you think about it, it kind of follows the 4-year cycle that has been happening in Bitcoin after each halving cycle. I thought this particular cycle would have been exacerbated, or you could say elongated a little bit more due to all the institutional adoption with the ETF products, but it seems as if the 4-year cycles are, you know, kind of working just as predicted. I ran a data analysis, and it's usually around 480 days after the halving. That is usually when the cycle tops, around similar. Panatera Capital also put out something similar. Hey, Alan is here. What's going on? Joshua. All right, well, good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Walks in Wall Street. It is a beautiful night here in New York City. We are on Central Park South, and we're going to be commuting back to Grand Central Terminal. I thought I'd quickly pop on live. I hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving weekend. And this was a very, very fun Thanksgiving. I finally made it to the parade. I've actually never been to the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade in person before. And I went this year, and it was awesome. So 2 thumbs up for that. Patrick Connolly, welcome. Yeah, type username. It's definitely been a while for sure. It's fun to pop on the live streams every once in a while, though. Cheers. Someone says, Tom, any thoughts on Michael Burry being back? What do you mean by being back? I think the news you're referring to is that he shut down his firm. I don't know. I mean, he's a very well-respected guy on Wall Street. It might be a little windy. Let me try to get out of the wind. But, look, I think a lot of people are very, very spooked about the markets overall, and they think they're quite overheated. You know, a lot of talk about a bubble in AI. And we've spoken about this ad nauseum, but, you know, to keep it brief and to keep it simple, anytime you have a technology that's going to fundamentally change the world, you're going to have some bubble-esque activity there, right? I mean, with the introduction of the internet, you're always going to have valuations getting ahead of themselves. But I don't accept the fact how many people are comparing this market to, let's say, the very peak of the 2000 dot-com bubble, because I really don't see many correlations there, because you have the hyperscalers like Alphabet, Amazon, and the like, all these big cloud computing giants that are essentially acting as the backbone, if you will, to AI. I mean, they've never made more money ever, right? At very, very healthy gross margins. Where I think you'll see, I guess, some bubble-ish activity is in some of the pure play, I guess you can call it pure play AI names or data center names. But the thing is, they're so small in terms of overall market cap in comparison to the big names that, you know, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter that much. But that's kind of my take on the whole thing. But look, you'll know, you know, when the vast majority of names are trading below the 50-day, the 200-day, you know that the market is rather weak. And it's been a thin market. It really, really has. But that's to be expected, right? Price follows earnings. And if you have all the hyperscalers, you know, just cranking out unbelievable numbers, right? Just unbelievable numbers, you know, that's where the money is going to flow. Hey, Trade Brigade, good to see you. Hopefully you're doing well. Apologies for the wind noise. I didn't even know I was going to go live tonight, but I'm like, you know what? I got to commute back home anyway. Let me just pop on and say what's up to everybody. Middle-aged grind. Cheers. Hope you're doing well. You know, unrelated, we're supposed to be getting some sort of northeaster later on in the week. So maybe we'll have some snow coming up. We'll see. Land of the Mittens is good to see you. Great to see you live. I guess another thing I'd say in addition to that is I wouldn't focus too much of the time and attention on is the market in a bubble and like kind of freaking out about that, because the thing is, markets run in cycles and they've always run in cycles, right? We just been through numerous absolutely brutal bear markets, right? 2020 was absolutely brutal. 2022, I would actually argue, was way worse than 2020. If anybody's, you know, traded through the 2022 bear in growth stocks, that was absolutely just unbelievably brutal. You had individual names down 80 and 90%. And many of them haven't even recovered, right? I mean, Zoom Video is probably the poster child of that, you know, COVID bubble era. You know, pretty much all of their earnings were compounded, pulled forward into 7 months. So, like, even if the market does correct, even if the market does go down, that's really my big disconnect with a lot of the financial media. But I understand they have to, you know, report on it in, I would presume, a clickbaity way, right? That it's going to be the next, you know, whatever. Oh wait, it's going to be worse than COVID. It's going to be worse than the .com. It's like markets have always gone up and always gone down. So it's like, yeah, I mean, are we going to have more bear markets? Yeah, of course. There's going to be numerous more brutal bear markets and numerous more bull markets. And I think we are in a very, very powerful cyclical bull market. And I believe that'll run longer than most people expect. Now, within those time frames, I know the wind noise is probably really punishing, but within those time frames, you're of course going to have pullbacks and setbacks in the market. it's a normal thing. I always like to revert to the data. You know, the S&P 500 is gonna pull back at least 10% twice a year. So if the S&P pulls back 10%, well, a lot of the individual names are going to be down 2x that, right? Some of the growth stocks that everybody trades are going to correct 40%. That's just how it's worked, you know, ad infinitum. Anyway, hopefully you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving. NBA Elias, good to see you. Hopefully you're doing well. I do think there'll be some bubble-ish activity, and you're already kind of seeing it in the data center space, as well as the what's the other big one, the flavor of the month that a lot of people have been getting involved in. I honestly haven't been getting involved in the I can't even think of it. Sorry, it's been a long day and I'm very, very tired. But the computing. Junior, what's going on? Hopefully you're doing well. Yes, quantum computing. Thank you, Trade Brigade. Yeah, data centers, memory, mining, quantum computing, for sure. You'll probably see a lot of those names that'll, you know, a lot of the people are trading now. They'll go down 80, 90%. But again, that's not really anything new. And I think that's what I try to stress. Like, that has been, pockets of that stuff have been going on forever in the market though, right? It's been going on absolutely forever. When I was in college, the big bubble was the marijuana stocks. Does anybody remember that? That must have been back in what, 2018? Maybe a little bit earlier, but that was the other like intermediate term bubble within a larger market, right? You're always going to have pockets that get overheated, that get overextended. You could probably also say that the software as a service SaaS market has been in, I guess you could call, if you want to, you could call it a bubble for the last 10 years. A lot of those multiples have compressed significantly, right? A lot of the software names, a lot of the enterprise software names used to be the best names in the market to own. You know, if I look back at my portfolio, the most winningest stock I'd ever owned in terms of, I made the most money in my career, was an Australian enterprise software company by the name of Atlassian. Trades under the ticker symbol TEAM. I couldn't even tell you what that stock is trading at right now. It's significantly below its 2021 high. And I believe that the market is just not assigning those high multiples to these software companies anymore, because the next big thing is AI, and a lot of these hyperscalers can, you know, maybe eat away at a lot of that market share. So perhaps it doesn't deserve those really stretched valuations. The LT Prod says the SaaS market is super saturated. I think there'll be a lot of disruption there, but I believe it'll take a lot longer than a lot of people realize or think. NBA Alliance is Tom, I'm surprised what has happened to Oracle in the past month. Well, the thing about Oracle and a lot of the other major hyperscalers is I believe the market is looking at what they're going to spend versus how much are they going to get back in free cash flow over the next 5 to 10 years. Another stock, to your point, that's been taking a pretty big beating in that space is Meta. Now, many people might be saying, you know, why do you think Meta is taking a big beating? Well, perhaps Zuckerberg continues to, you know, at least project to the market that he's going to spend. But what's going to be the payback of that spending? And I think for Meta, you're going to see the payback from that spending come much, much later on than, let's say, the spending for Alphabet, right? Because Alphabet has held up much better than a lot of the other stocks. I'd say a lot of the other Magnificent Seven stocks. And I think the reason for that is because they kind of play both sides of the fence. They have Google's Gemini, but they also have Google Cloud, which is just a cash flow monster. So, you know, Meta is more of a one-directional business. They're trying to be a multifaceted business. I think Mark Zuckerberg will pull it off, but I think they're going to see a much later payback on a lot of their spending. At least that's my opinion. I mean, what do you guys think? Hey, Patrick Connolly, good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Lee, what's going on? We're by Radio City Music Hall. I think we're gonna go over to Fifth Avenue now, though, because it's a little bit too crazy right in front of Radio City every year, 50th Street. Even though it looks quite nice, it looks very pretty now for the holidays, I think a little bit too crazy for me tonight. I would say maybe a little bit too mentally stimulating, if you will. Hey, Solo 401, what's going on? The LT Prods, as Uber CEO already said, going autonomous will be painful. Yeah, I mean, that's, if you think about, again, going back to just the change, like artificial intelligence, robotics, I believe, I was reading an article the other day, Amazon has now deployed 1 million robots in the field throughout their business. So when you have such radical change, I think at this breakneck of a speed, right? The internet took a long time to build out, relatively speaking, right? I would argue from, 1995 until maybe about, 4 years ago, that's when the bulk of the internet, like the bulk of the true internet reached its peak. And I think AI is going to take a lot quicker to build out, right? And we're going to discover a lot of the winners faster than we did with a lot of the internet stuff. And with that, you're going to have unbelievable wealth creation. However, I believe it's going to be concentrated to a very, very select few companies, public companies, and it's going to really exacerbate the wealth divide, I think. I believe that that's the biggest problem that humanity needs to solve. And on a smaller scale, you kind of see it on display. Look at all this garbage. You kind of see it on display in just the broader US economy as a whole, right? On a much, much smaller scale. I'll give you a New York example. Every single 5-star hotel was totally booked. Restaurants were packed. I mean, this city was absolutely booming. That's the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree. So the economy at the very, very high end of the market, I would argue, has never been doing better. And there was an interview with Scott Bessent, who is the Treasury Secretary. And he said one of the most striking things that he has heard of last year is that more Americans took European vacations in 2024 than any point in history. However, on the flip side, more Americans know how to solve that. I'm not smart enough to come up with an answer how to solve that. And unfortunately, I think that wealth divide is going to continue to get worse because, with all this bubble talk, right? I believe that people are severely underestimating just how much wealth creation this market is going to make over the next 10 years. And unfortunately, right, if you go back to the data, about 99% of equities, or 90% of equities or stocks, are owned by the top 10% of Americans. So if we don't somehow help more people transition to the investor class, it's going to be a very difficult problem to solve. St. Patrick's Cathedral here, 5th Avenue and 51st Street. So two things could be true at once. You've probably seen a lot of stuff in the media about how terrible the economy is, and maybe that's true. But what's also true is that the economy has never been better. So two things can be true at once. It's very interesting to think about it that way. But from a small anecdotal example from New York City, like it's just booming here, right? Especially the very, very high end. So perhaps the biggest maybe problem that needs to be solved is how do we bring more people up? Because I'm not too sure how much more regular working class people can take if we really slingshot this to the upside. So you never know. I'm really an eternal optimist, and I believe that with AI, especially with robotics and fully autonomous vehicles and humanoid robots, perhaps we'll find a solution to this. But don't be surprised if, after a normal market correction, you see a lot of these big hyperscalers go much, much higher. Anyway, this is the Cartier store. Christmas lights look quite beautiful here. MBA Elias says people with no stocks, real estate, or other assets are really going to struggle. K-shaped economy will last for a while. I think you're right. I definitely think you're right. Let's try to get away from this guy with the blaring music. Crypto says keep a broad perspective of technology more than what you want to focus on. AI, because it's competitive AI. Like I said, if you have 5 major companies with AI, they will buy each other from the truth. Interesting. Matthew, what's going on? It's good to see you. Hopefully you're well. AZ, how are you? Cheers. Melissa 2087, welcome. Well, look, here's another thing. I'll try to keep it more upbeat because I am very optimistic on the overall economy. I think you're going to start to see what AI. Here's the biggest thing that I've discovered so far, at least observed, is probably the more appropriate word from this big artificial intelligence boom, and it's that you don't really need as many people as you think to run a very, very profitable and massive business. I would say that's the number one thing. So on the upside, I think it's never been easier for a person to get started and make their own business, market their own ideas, particularly with these free, AI tools that we have available to us. I mean, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Grok, these things are really unbelievable. If you really spend the time, experiment with them, use them to your advantage, it really just makes you like a superhuman, to be honest. I mean, I'm talking to these AI bots all day. So perhaps what you'll see, and as I kind of read through the comments, a lot of you are kind of in agreement, is that you'll see a lot of the wealth creation hoarded to the top, right? You think about Alphabet, Apple, Nvidia, Broadcom, Microsoft, all the big hyperscalers, right? Like Amazon, because those companies are really going to be the rails for AI. However, you're also going to see one or two man or one or two woman companies that are at a $25 million run rate a year, just because artificial intelligence will. Oh my God! I didn't even notice there's a person right here. What the fuck? Holy shit! Did anybody else notice that? Oh, did the cab hit the guy? Oh, jeez. I didn't even notice this. Hold on one second. Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Yeah, they called. I just made sure that somebody called. Yeah, the security guy. I don't know what happened. I didn't even notice. Jesus. I think this may be the ambulance coming now for the guy. I just needed to stop real quick just to make sure that somebody called, but the security guy called in and I think they're on their way. I didn't even see. I had no idea. I'm a little fatigued today, a little tired, but I had no idea. I just caught him out of the corner of my eye. Hold on one second. Yeah, maybe move him off to the side, I guess. Okay, we're back. The paramedics got him. Let me adjust here for a minute. Sorry, give me 2 seconds here. I'm just dealing with something. I didn't notice. I think he's having a drug overdose, but yeah, I just wanted to make sure that the paramedics were called. But he'll get the help he needs. I think he just had an overdose. But I didn't know what happened. So that's the thing. I didn't know what happened because I just saw him out of the corner of my eye, and I thought he got hit by a car. At first, at least, but. All right, let's head down because I do have to get the train. But I just wanted to make sure that situation was taken care of. I do see a lot of drug overdoses in this city, but usually I could tell right away when somebody's having an episode like that. But there was that yellow cab right there. So I thought, I'm like, wait, did this cab driver just hit this guy? So I didn't know, but help was already on the way. Latha, good to see you. Gary, welcome. Dave says the incident was not caught on the video. Got it. Yeah, it was strange, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, you never know what you're going to see in New York. I was caught up talking about something else, and then I'm like, what is that? And out of the corner of my eyes, I'm like, is that a guy laying on the floor? Anyway, it's definitely sad, man. Continue on our way down. I forgot what we were talking about, but I guess it doesn't matter. It's late. We're just kind of hanging out. Oh yeah, on the optimistic side for AI, because there's a lot of pessimism out there that AI is going to take everyone's jobs. Robotics are going to automate a lot of stuff away. The first thing I'd like to say is, you know, a lot of the so-called automation has been going on for a long time. And if you look back throughout history, every time, for the most part, a job has gotten automated away, it was really for the better of humanity. You can go all the way back to the Industrial Revolution. Like, working conditions have gotten a lot better for Americans. And I don't know if I want people working these really, really, you know, demanding and laborious warehousing jobs where, you know, if you look at some of the insurance claim data, a lot of people who are on the disability and all that stuff, it's because of working these really, really difficult and tiresome, you know, warehousing jobs or these, you know, construction jobs where it's very dangerous over time, lifting, you know, very heavy objects, these packages. The good news is a lot of that stuff is going to be automated away. And yes, it'll destroy some jobs, but the economy has already adapted. And I think with artificial intelligence, it'll be able to afford the people the tools to start their own businesses and do their own things. One of the main points I made before that little episode there is that the number one thing that I've noticed about AI so far is that it's really taught us that you don't need all of these people to run these organizations. You could really streamline a lot of this stuff, and if you provide somebody with a subscription of Gemini or Grok or pick your AI, it can really make you that much more efficient to do the job of maybe 3 or 4 people. So I wouldn't be surprised if you start to see businesses popping up, 2-3 employees with multi-million-dollar run rates. I mean, you're already starting to see that on a much smaller scale, right? I mean, if you look at the broadcasting and telecommunications business, or I should say media business, with a lot of these late night talk show hosts, and I really like a lot of the late night talk show hosts. I think all of them are great. They're really funny and they put on a good production, but they cost about $25 million in salaries and all the production and people. But there's podcasts out there that pull millions of viewers, multi-millions of dollars worth of revenue, and they operate at damn near 99% margins because it's just a guy or a girl with a camera, and they click record, and there's no employees. There's maybe 2 people. But with all this traditional broadcasting from Fox News, from CNN, the economics of it just doesn't work anymore. To pay an anchor $20 million a year to maybe get a fraction of the viewership that you would if you have some of these independent media outlets. So everything is constantly changing. The internet has already disrupted just monster industries out there. I just think that the artificial intelligence boom is happening at such a breakneck speed that it's going to cause a lot of displacement in such a short window of time. That's the big concern. Hey, what's up, Peter? Peter says, how do you make sure the information the AI is giving you is accurate if you don't have basic understanding of the subject you are inquiring about? Well, I think that's been one of the biggest problems, right? Is how to train these large language models. And Matthew says, I think humans create great things, but also simultaneously ruin everything. That is true. I want to be a GMO. Says for $20 million, you could build a generated anchor. You could do that for a lot less than that. I mean, has anybody played around with Gemini's new update, or even OpenAI's new update? Some of these videos that you could generate are so realistic. I think it's going to open the floodgates for just AI-generated content on its own. And the cost of doing this to the end user is pretty much nothing. It's pretty much nothing. Yes, West Coast Walker, Sora is super realistic. Can you imagine how realistic it's going to be in 5 years? It's really, I mean, it's going to be wild. It's essentially made, how could I explain this? I think you guys, I don't even need to say it, you guys already know. But it's made some of the most advanced tools available to the masses. And that's very inspiring in and of itself. A random person, right, in middle America somewhere with just a cell phone and an internet connection essentially has access to the world, the means to build, potentially a multi-million-dollar business. Like the tools to literally do anything at your disposal on a smartphone. Like that is unheard of. So that's the upside to it. Right? It's never been easier to get started. It's never been easier to start a business or really do anything in the United States of America. Like you don't need money. Like that's the thing that's crazy. Like you don't need startup capital to do most things now in the United States. 3 grams says it's not all AI slop. It's like creating art. Yeah, I mean, at first you're gonna have a lot of nonsense. I mean, there's a ton of AI slop out there, but some of it is very, very good. Like, just think of all the possibilities. Like, the possibilities are endless. And we have a first mover advantage at a lot of this stuff. If you're running a small business or a small operation, I would just be on ChatGPT or Gemini, Grok all day, just peppering it with questions and building things. I mean, the vibe coding on Gemini is unbelievable. I mean, you could just build anything, and the code is very, very good. It is very, very good. Patrick Connolly, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Let me read some more of the comments. Kathleen says white collar jobs have been eliminated in OKC, Paycom and the like. Yeah, and so all of those job cuts, right, are being perceived by Main Street and a little bit of Wall Street as very negative or bearish, right? The interpretation is totally wrong. Like, that's the thing that it's either I don't believe the mainstream media believes their own narrative, is kind of what I'm getting at. Because I don't see how you could be interpreting that as a negative. And I know it sounds crazy, but when you have a company like Paycom, right, or just name any major Fortune 500 company that are announcing all these layoffs, like, it's because, again, of kind of what we just talked about. The number one benefit of artificial intelligence, or what it's really taught me, is that these companies with 50,000 employees, they don't need 50,000 employees. I think we're really, really going to have to come to terms with that. I would even go out on a limb right now to say there's no company on this earth that needs 50,000 employees. You could do it with so much less, for sure. Like, that is just a fact. That is just a total fact. So when you see all of and I think I wrote about this in a newsletter, when you see all of these job cuts, many people are going to be interpreting this as, the economy's terrible, therefore we're laying people off. It's the opposite. It's these tools have been able to make us so much more productive that these companies don't need as many employees. And of course, it's horrible when anybody gets laid off, right? I'm not a sociopath. You don't want people to lose their jobs. What I am a little bit concerned about, even more so than the layoffs, is the entry-level job market. Because artificial intelligence can do a lot of the things that I used to do when I was, 19, 20 years old, just starting out, right? Doing, monotonous, nonsense tasks just so you can learn the ropes and work your way up. It's scary that AI can now do that. So how is the next generation going to learn? I think people are really going to need to adapt to that, because it seems as if these AI tools are making the VP status or the managing director status or whatnot so efficient that they're like, do I really need this analyst? Probably not. I have Gemini as my analyst. I have Grok as my analyst, right? And you could project that down the list of any industry. Any industry, really. This is now 44th Street. Someone says I worked for an insurance company that never had a work stoppage or layoff in 145 years. Wow. Hey, Joe is here. Says, good evening, Tom. Happy Thanksgiving weekend. Thank you so much, Joe. I appreciate it. Let me scroll through some more of the comments. Lace Mushroom says you need to become the company with AI if you want to be a new millionaire. It's like anything, if you're not the guy who starts Amazon, you're just getting by. I don't know about that. Hey, Victor, good to see you. Well, again, the only way I can tie it back into, I guess, a circular motion is that, yes, you're going to see companies become more efficient, so therefore they don't need as many employees. But that also works in favor for the little guy, because you can start your own company and maybe make, $100,000 a year. AI can absolutely help anybody here in this chat, expand their hobby into maybe a business that generates a few $100,000 a year. It's totally possible with AI, and it's just very, very good. So perhaps you'll just see, the centralization of the Magnificent Seven, and then everybody else has these companies of maybe 20 or so people, or maybe less, or 1 or 2 man businesses that are doing really, really well with virtually no employees. It definitely will be interesting to see how people adapt to this. It does seem as if a lot of that mentorship could potentially be going away. If you're just graduating from college and you want to work at an entry-level job, in banking, for example, right? You want to become an analyst. Well, are banks going to need as many analysts as they did before? I don't know. What if you want to work in management consulting? Are you going to need as many entry-level consultants as you used to? I don't think so. So what I would say, to all the college students out there, is I think you need to be very, very proactive. Right? I would start doing the job before you get the job. Start building things of your own, because you really need to be able to set yourself apart from the competition. Yeah, Alan, that's true. Robert Herjavec said recently, mentors today are books, read and research as much as you can stomach. That's a very, very good way to look at it. That's a very, very good frame, because, again, I think you're right. Right, on one hand, we made the argument for, the mentorship, the nurturing of, you start at the ground floor and work your way up to a company. Maybe that's going away a little bit, but, kind of speaking out of both sides of my mouth here, think about all of the resources these young kids have nowadays. Like even me. Like, think about all the resources we have at our disposal right now. It's almost just unbelievable, right? Any skill we want to learn within reason, right? Minus being a doctor, you can pretty much learn, right? If you have good autodidact skills. Really, honestly, without being a doctor, I was going to throw an engineer in there, but honestly, look at Palmer Luckey. I don't even think he held a job before he created his company. So I mean, the access to information we have. I mean, you could spend all day on YouTube teaching yourself how to do stuff. That's how I learned to code, is on YouTube and codeacademy.com, all for free. So that is very true. Maybe you won't have direct access as much to people. However, you do have more access to any piece of information in the world at your disposal 24/7, 365. That is very, very true. So again, it's sort of like a glass half empty or a glass half full conversation. And you really got to try to stay optimistic and use all of these tools to your advantage. Like, of course there's going to be disruption, right? Of course there's going to be loss of jobs. But there's also going to be a lot of really cool shit that comes out of this, and a lot of really cool stuff that has already come out of this, right? I mean, anybody can go on Gemini, Google's Gemini right now, and start vibe coding, or teaching yourself how to, code in Python, or... I was going fast. Particularly, by the way, I would say the easiest thing to learn on your own, and this is probably going to hurt the egos of a lot of the finance people in the chat, but if you're being honest, one of the easiest skills to learn is investing. Like, it is so cookie cutter. Like, the reason why investing is very difficult is because of the emotional aspect and the psychological aspect. The fundamental aspect to investing in business is very simple. Very, very simple, right? If you can just read all the good books, right? Just take a very basic intro to finance course, which are all available for free on the internet, by the way, from some of the best professors in the world. We always talk about, Professor Damodaran. You can take his NYU Stern securities analysis course and corporate finance course for free on the internet. For free. That's a $250,000 value for free. He posts on the internet. You could read every single investor letter that Warren Buffett has ever written. You could probably just type into ChatGPT or Grok or Gemini and say, give me a 20-page summary of every single investor letter that Warren Buffett has ever wrote, right? You could read all of the Benjamin Graham books, everything, right? And just learn the basics of investing in basic accounting. And it's never been easier to do that, ever. This is now right outside of One Vanderbilt. Speaking of banking, check this out. This is the very, very top of 270 Park Avenue. It's the new JP Morgan Chase office tower. And then you also have the MetLife building in the distance as well. Someone says, saying that reading a few intro books and taking basic courses makes you ready for advanced finance is a flat out myth. Well, yeah, I mean, obviously it's a little bit more nuanced than that. I'm not saying that, hey, if you read, How to Make Money in Stocks by William J. O'Neill, you're going to be able to advise, Colgate, Palmolive on their next acquisition. Okay, I think that's implied with kind of what I'm getting at here. I'm not saying, hey, if you read some basic intro to finance stuff, you could partner up with Steven Schwartzman on their next LBO, right? Okay, I think that's pretty much implied with that. But what I'm saying is that if you have your own personal capital, okay, you have a job, let's say you're making a couple $100,000 a year, you really don't need all these financial advisors. Like, you can manage your money yourself and grow grow a nice portfolio with knowing the basics, right? If you know how to read a balance sheet, if you know how to read an income statement, and you have those autodidact skills, and you really put yourself to the test and you study this material, right? You have ChatGPT, you have Grok, you could back test things. Like, you can do it. That is totally possible. But I a lot of times when I say things, I try to assume, and I know I should never assume, but that it's implied that, you're probably not going to become a managing director at Citadel, if you read an intro to finance book. Like, I think that's kind of implied with what I'm saying. You're not going to make partner at Millennium, by, asking ChatGPT, how do I make a trading bot in Python, right? That's totally implied. Like, of course, if you want to be a managing director at Blackstone, you're probably going to need to go to an Ivy League school. You're going to need to get your MBA at an Ivy League school, of course. But I'm talking more broadly of the average person out there, right? That has the average career, good career. You can teach yourself how to do most things. But of course, you're not going to be a partner at Goldman Sachs. You walk into the interview and say, hey, I read How to Make Money in Stocks by William J. O'Neill. Hey, Ukrainian Royal, good to see you. Hope you're well. Thanks so much for your support. You're asking about snow. We might get some snow this week. They're saying maybe 3 to 5 inches of snow this week. We'll see. Now, this building right here is the Hyatt Grand Central. Apparently, this is going to be set for demolition here. And when it's demoed, there's going to be a brand new Class A office tower being built in its place. That's going to be over 1,200 feet tall, so it's going to block that view of the Chrysler building, which is a little unfortunate, but I guess the skyline in New York City is ever changing. Take you to the main entrance of the Chrysler building. Brenda says you need to work in broadcasting. Well, that's maybe, kind of a topic that runs parallel to what we're talking about, right? What we spent the majority of the night talking about is how all of these different technologies have really just broken down the barriers. Right? Yes, to get a job, maybe, working the camera or something in the newsroom and working your way up. Now, you just get any cell phone for maybe $200 off Amazon, and you can record yourself making videos, right? If you want to report on the news, there's nothing stopping you from, making your own broadcast media channel on YouTube or Twitch or whatever, and report on something, right? Do the job. If you want to, start a company that rivals Bloomberg, you probably could, right? There's nothing stopping you from looking at all the deal flow that's going on Wall Street and reporting on it, right? And put your opinion on it. Why do you think it's a good idea, or why do you think this pharmaceutical company is making a mistake by acquiring this biotech, right? Why is that a mistake? Write an article about it, publish it on Substack, and film a video about it. Put it up. Nobody's stopping you from doing that. If you want to report on the weather, you could report on the weather. Make a storm chasers channel or whatever. So working in broadcasting, there's no barrier to entry anymore with the internet. You could film yourself broadcasting or reporting on anything. And if you do it consistently over time, maybe you'll be making more money than, some of the big broadcasters out there. The barrier to entry on almost everything has just been totally obliterated. And that's a really encouraging thing for the young people, but also discouraging at the same time. Because again, to kind of make this conversation circular, maybe you don't have a lot of those, pure play mentorship opportunities as you did in the past, like I had. Like when I first started my career, I was in the office every day. I was on a team. I had all the sales reps, all the account executives. You had all the enterprise account executives. You had the sales manager. You had the VP. And it was very regimented and systematic in nature. And you would learn from a lot of the people in the office. And I think that's so invaluable. Hopefully that will always continue. But maybe having an experience like that is going to be harder to come by for some people, perhaps. It might sound like a boomer take from me, but after doing some self-reflection on the pandemic with all the remote work stuff, I think the remote work is one of the worst things that have ever happened to young people. And I think I could say with certainty, I would not have been as successful as I was in my career selling technology or selling software if I wasn't in the office every day. I don't think I would be able to do it, because if I look at the vast majority of the deals and when I got promoted to enterprise sales, and then I was a director of enterprise sales for a company, all those deals I worked on with other top sales reps that I would shadow or say, hey, you're at the top of the leaderboard every single month. How do you do it? What could I do for you? Right? Could I make some calls for you? Could I set appointments for you? And I would let them keep the majority of the commission at first. I just want to be a part of the deal, to understand how to deal, right? To understand the sales cycle. How do they deal with customers? Right? How do you close a big enterprise software transaction that takes 24 to 36 months in some cases, right? Understanding differences in sales cycles. Maybe this software has a shorter sales cycle because there's less integrations, right? I don't think I would be able to understand any of that if I wasn't in the office every day. However, I think you're seeing this pendulum shifting now to more in office, which might be, a little bit tedious for people to think about now. However, it really does help younger people to learn from top people. And if the top people aren't in the office, how are you going to learn those best practices? Someone says it created laziness and sloth. Maybe. There were a lot of people during the pandemic that were quote unquote working, but they were just chilling at home all day. Alan says I'm on a hybrid schedule now, 3 days a week in the office. That's not bad. That's definitely not bad. Ooh, Layla says remote school certainly hurt our college age kids. I totally agree. Because of course college is about getting an education. Of course. But perhaps an even more important aspect of college is interacting with your peers and building a network of people, right, that you can do business with in the future. Particularly if you go to a top 50 school, right? If you go to a top 50 school or an Ivy League school, of course you're there for the education, of course, right? It's an invaluable educational experience. But perhaps what's more invaluable is your classmates. You know, if you go to a top 50 school, chances are in 20 years, your classmates are going to be the heads of business, the heads of industry, and potential clients and customers that you're going to be doing business with. So by having all of this online remote schooling, of course there's going to be a certain section of the populace that's going to thrive in that environment. But I would argue very few, perhaps. Very, very few. Hey, Trade Brigade, good to see you. Yeah, it is late. I thought I was going to pop on here for 20 minutes, but I'm probably going to jump off in a minute as well. Maybe I'll go down one more block and loop around to Grand Central. Yeah, Western Mass Dave's socialization is crucial, for sure. I mean, some of the best times for me was hanging out with coworkers, right? The best times. So there will be give and take, but again, kind of what I was saying. With most things, now with AI and the internet, you can probably become pretty good if you're an autodidact. You can become pretty good at most things, right? Most things with AI. And again, that's under the implied notion that, yeah, you know, you're not going to be, you know, the CEO of Walt Disney or the CEO of, you know, Bank of America if you just solely rely on ChatGPT. But if you want to level up your skill set and, you know, build a thriving business on your own, the tools available right now for you to do that is totally there. It is totally there. If you want to take a business, maybe you're a business right now, you're doing $100,000 a year in revenue. If you employ AI, you can 10x that in 5 years, for sure. Like, that is just for sure. Just ask Grok, ask Google's Gemini, ask ChatGPT. You know, what are some different approaches I could take in the business to really scale this, right? It'll tell you all about scaling, for sure. Someone says the CEO of Walmart started in the parking lot. Now, speaking of Walmart, has anybody had any experience with Walmart's new AI? I think, what is Walmart's new AI called? Is it Spark or something like that? I was reading this article the other day in Barron's. About all these new AI tools that these brands are employing to help drive sales. I believe Amazon's new AI is Rufus, I think it's called. Brenda says you have, it's okay. Now imagine when that stuff gets really, really good. Oh, Sparky. Yeah, Sparky is what the Walmart's AI. I think Amazon is Rufus, right? The million-dollar question is when all of this stuff will be integrated in with the AI platforms like ChatGPT, Google's Gemini. When can you make a seamless order and integrate those systems and purchase, you know, your entire list from Amazon or Whole Foods or Walmart. Like, that's going to be the next big thing. I'm going to head inside Grand Central Station now. See how busy it is in here. Embarrassed, as you can tell, Rufus to purchase an item when the price falls below a certain threshold. Wow. You know, I'm gonna have to start playing around with a lot of that stuff. You know, I was reading another article in Barron's this weekend. It says that in most major cities across the United States, Amazon is not only offering same-day delivery, but they're offering 3 to 6 hour delivery. Like, how is brick and mortar stores gonna keep up with that? You know, in New York City, if you walk into a CVS or a Rite Aid, it's gonna take you 20 minutes to buy something because you have to call the employee to unlock the plexiglass just to get a thing of toothpaste. But if I can literally talk to my AI agent on Amazon and say, oh, you know what, I forgot to buy toothpaste, I forgot to buy toilet paper, can you order that and have it delivered before I get home? And if Amazon can deliver that in 3 hours, it's just gonna be game over. It's gonna, I mean, it's already game over for retail, but the friction in between those transactions is so grotesque at this point. At least it is in New York City. If you walk into a CVS and you need to buy anything of value, you gotta press the button, wait for the guy to come and unlock the plexiglass case. Why would I ever do that if I can talk to the AI, Rufus, and say, order toothpaste, have it to my door in 2 hours? It's just not even gonna be possible for them to be in business, right? Wow. 765 says Amazon started 48-hour window delivery over 4 years ago in Ohio. I think 90% of the United States now has same-day delivery with Amazon, which is crazy. And Walmart is now doing drone delivery. I think that's going to be a massive rollout too. Capios's retail will be gone. I have an interesting theory. While I agree with you, I think it's also going to set the tone for a marketplace in which people crave having a very good in-store retail experience. But the very good in-store retail experience is not, you know, pressing the little button and having an employee walk over disgruntled with an attitude to unlock the plexiglass to get your toothpaste. What I think you'll start to see when autonomous drones start delivering all of our food and stuff like that, you're going to see the creation of, I would say, very targeted upscale retail stores that are all focused on experience. And the reason why I'm making that prediction is because there's been a lot of these, and I'm sure many of you have noticed this as well. It's particularly prevalent in New York and cities like LA. These social clubs, like these very elitist social clubs, you're gonna start to see that type of experience pop up in everyday retailing, because people are gonna want a place to go to have a human interaction, but they're going to command exceptional service, and unfortunately that's going to require, you know, unbelievable prices. So I think that's going to create a big market in that. You're also going to have a niche market in like cafes. That's why I think cafe culture is really exploding. Like very stuffy coffee culture where you pay $10 for a cup of coffee. I think that type of business is going to do really well because people are going to crave those in-person experiences with very, very high level service. If you can't compete on service and you are in the brick and mortar business, you're just going to be totally obliterated by all these e-commerce businesses. It's going to be impossible to keep up. Impossible. Anyway, Cosmo, what's going on? Hopefully you're well. Dan the man in New York says, Tom, I'll be sending my Optimus robot to the store. You know, that sounds like a hilarious comment, but that could be the future. You know, you're at home getting some work done, you just tell your Optimus bot to quickly go to the store and pick up your items. Hey, Out and About is back in the day, Toronto liquor store. Had us in the stock room.
No, they are.
Oh, interesting. They had to fill out order sheets for you to get what you wanted. Interesting.
There's
Johnny says, I was in Reno, Nevada this week, and they had a robot security guard on wheels patrolling the parking lot. Wow. They tried to put one of those robots inside the subway in New York City in Times Square, but apparently they decommissioned it. I think the NYPD decommissioned it after like 2 months or so. I don't know why. Someone says Tesla self-drives to Walmart, parks, pops the trunk, groceries delivered, drives itself home, and it could probably generate revenue for you by being its own robotaxi. I mean, the future is going to be very, very bright with all these autonomous vehicles because I think it's going to make safety a very, very big priority. I think you're going to have a significant decrease in vehicle deaths, which is fantastic. That's what we all want. I mean, Waymo is now rolling out in Miami. Anyway, I just wanted to pop on for maybe an hour. Oh, E-Dash says, did you see the article about David Sachs? I didn't. That was a New York Times article, right? I will read it, though. I will read it. I didn't have time to, but I will read it. Chris Pine says, am I in the XRP yet? I do not own any XRP. So before I sign off for the night, before I go, anything pressing, anything big you guys think I should be looking into, or anything on anybody's mind? I'll probably go live a few other times this week, but anything pressing? I mean, we haven't spoken in a long time, so. Andy, what's going on? Bree Graham says, when are you coming back? Maybe I'll pop on live tomorrow night. You never know. Laced Mushroom says, Bitcoin. Yeah, I mean, you know, it looks like Bitcoin is following the 4-year cycle. Now, originally I thought that perhaps the 4-year cycle would be broken because of all the institutional adoption, but it honestly seems like it's hit the nail on the head. Now, the 4-year cycle usually states that about 480 days after the halving, that's usually when we have the cycle top. 480 days after the last halving was about August 18th, I think. You could ask ChatGPT, and that's pretty much around the time we topped. And I mean, I can't get into a whole history lesson on the Bitcoin halving, but essentially it halves the supply, right? And so the first few halvings had a really, really major impact on the supply of Bitcoin, the new supply of Bitcoin. And obviously that goes down as time goes on. But it seems as if the 4-year cycle is right on the money. NBA Elias is who will replace Tim Cook at Apple next year. I'm not too sure. But hopefully it's someone fantastic. Gary's, how will the city be affected by this new mayor? It's a good question. I don't think that it's going to be really much affected at all, to be honest. I've done a stream on the Mamdani, why a lot of people voted for him. I predicted that he would win mayor of New York City before we even had the Democratic primary. A mayor is very limited in their ability to make changes. However, if he doesn't have any leeway or give on his ideas, you'll probably just see more of the same, in which case the quote-unquote affordable units in the city, which, if you want to rent a studio for $2,500 or $3,000, a lot of that product is going to continue to erode. But the luxury sector will just be doing well, chugging along as it's always done. E-Dash's private equity is having trouble exiting positions. Yes, that is true. To some extent, by the way. I wish I had more time to talk about that a little bit more. Maybe we'll talk about that tomorrow night. But there's a little, to some extent, and I'll explain why. Dan the Man, thank you so much for your kind donations. It's happy holidays, Tom. Thank you for all your content. Well, thank you for watching. Yeah, hopefully you guys have been enjoying I've been trying to add an interesting twist to a lot of the content that I've been posting. More so educational on the neighborhoods, more so educational on the specific architects that made this city so great, and taking you guys behind the scenes on some of the amazing properties I've been working on. Hey, Marjan Worldwide says, I love this channel when you had a skateboard. I still have the skateboard, by the way. Happy holidays to you, and thank you for supporting us all these years. I would say the biggest thing is don't get too pessimistic, right? If this overall market, which I think it's safe to say that the Bitcoin and crypto market isn't a bear. It's a bear. This is a rudimentary bear market in the crypto markets. And I think it's leading the equities market for now. But even if we have, maybe a 4 to 6 month bear in equities, maybe we won't even get that. I think you'll see much higher prices. I don't think that the AI themed bull market has run its course yet. I think you still have one massive leg higher. Because if this turns out to be like everybody says it's going to turn out to be, then you need some sort of parabolic blow-off frenzy top like you had in '99. And we didn't have that. This is a very structured market pullback with a lot of the low earnings names getting crushed and then selling down the leaders after. So I don't see a major market top. I just don't see it. I don't see it. Crypto meme. Yes, I'm so thankful we get to see one more time under 100K. I mean, this is looking like this is a textbook 4-year cycle for Bitcoin. Crypto meme, I think I connected with you on Twitter. I'm going to send you this research report. Actually, I'll check if I can send it, but it's all about the 4-year cycle, and maybe I'll send it to you. AZ, oh, thank you so much. Yeah, my dog did pass away, unfortunately. Yeah, interesting things happening in Japan for sure. However, I think it's still bullish for Japanese equities. if you look at a monthly chart of the Nikkei index, we've broken out pretty solidly in a new all-time record high territory, and I think you're going to have maybe even a 1 to 2 year bull market in Japanese equities. But if Japan, essentially, if Japan is forced to unwind some of their positions in U.S. Treasuries, that could create a little bit of a tizzy in the market. That is true. I would agree with you. There was a good article in Barron's, by the way, this weekend on that. I think you would appreciate. All right, everyone. The Papa Smurf OG, appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. I know, the great Ocho Cinco has passed on, unfortunately. All right, maybe I'll pop on tomorrow around 8:30, guys. What do you think? Because there is a lot to see in the city. There's a lot of awesome stuff to see. Anyway, Lace Mushroom, thank you so much for joining. Robert, Victor Santos, I appreciate you very much. Western Mass Dave, Solo 401, wishing you all a wonderful, wonderful week coming up. AZ, appreciate it. Dan the Man, Andy, thank you so much. Bree Grams. Oh, we forgot to talk about gold and silver. We're having another, appears to be potentially another leg up in gold and silver. We'll see. Mohammed, thank you so much. We'll see you guys tomorrow. And happy Monday. Make it a great week. Take care. Trish, thank you so much.